welcome back to All Terrain Marriages Session 2. We're Danny and Stephanie Gutierrez, and we are so glad that you're back as we continue this journey together. And we hope that you were able to take advantage of last week's discussion questions and found yourselves really having some great conversations about your marriages. So today in this session, we're going to continue our look at the first of our 4 all-terrain words, which was location. So last time we touched on how important it is to recognize where we're at as individuals first, and from there be able to more accurately assess where we're at as a couple. So in your discussion guide, we also included some questions to help you start that process of checking in with where you are at.
You know, there's another aspect to location that's going to be really helpful and make a difference when it comes to us being all-terrain marriages. And that is the current state of our energy and emotional reserves. You know, I love a term Eugene Peterson used in his personal journals that showed up and was recorded in his biography, Burning in My Bones, written by Win Collier. It's a term that he used when he was reflecting upon his own marriage and the potential effect that ministry can have on what he called marital energy. That exclusive energy that we have reserved for each other. And it's this energy that I believe that can be perceived by others. Yeah. You know, for example, I don't want my kids to just know that I'm married to their mom. I want them to perceive, even if they don't have words for it, that there's a special energy in this relationship that can affect the very room that both of us find ourselves in. Mm-hmm. You know, the other night we were at a community square dancing class here in our city, and during one of those songs where the caller called out, do-si-do with your partner, which is when you dance around them, I danced around Stephanie and I gave her this generous butt pinch. And she says to me all wide-eyed, she goes, Danny, not everyone here knows that we're married. To which I naturally explained, I said, exactly. I want them to know that we are. See, that marital energy comes from 2 distinct sources, mine and hers. And when I bring my whole self to this relationship, I got to understand that I'm bringing also my present level of energy.
Yeah. Okay, in fact, in light of that, let's do something really quickly. Grab your notebook or a piece of paper and draw a thermometer, or a weird, ugly, lumpy tube if you're a star artist like me. And at the top of your thermometer, write the word energized. And underneath the thermometer, write empty. Now mark the place on your thermometer, again, do this as an individual, that shows how much energy your marriage relationship has for you right now. And wherever you land, just pick a word of your own to describe that level. With that, have your batteries run out? Maybe you're at empty. Or maybe you just had an incredible conversation or time of doing ministry together or lovemaking and you are charged up. Or maybe you find yourself somewhere in the middle, but you're asking yourself, where's your spark at? And just pause the video right here if you need to and mark that on your thermometer. Chances are you're not in the same place as your spouse. And you might be, and that's great if so, but you may not be, and that's okay too. Because this is all about being honest with yourself and with each other. I can be honest and vulnerable and say that I remember a recent season as we were in the middle of a massive transition. This was not long ago. And I happened to ask Danny, how would you rate our marriage right now out of 10? Okay, if you're gonna ask that question, you need to be ready for the answer, because I was feeling like our marriage was an 8, or maybe even a 9, and I assumed he was around the same. His answer was 4. I was shocked, but we were able to talk about it, and it gave me an opportunity to really hear his heart and to make some changes. And we have had seasons where it's been the exact opposite. Yeah. And Danny's heard me out when I wasn't feeling as great as where he was at that time. Because that's life. It's inevitable. It happens sometimes. But staying there, that doesn't have to be inevitable. No, that's a time to be responsible and to take ownership. So as today we are looking at marital energy and talking specifically about our relationships being places to find energy and rest, like we did with terrains, we're first looking at it from our individual perspectives in the relationship. And we may find ourselves in very different places when it comes to our energy levels. Right. And when we don't understand that, I think it can create tension and resentment and threat sometimes. Because when it comes to doing life together, even if we manage to get on the same page as to what our terrain in marriage is, we might find ourselves with different amounts of energy that we're bringing to our marriages. So to be able to successfully assess what marital energy we have available together, we really have to understand first what replenishes us individually and then be intentional about that kind of self-care. Because the fact is, we all charge our batteries differently. So what energizes and brings rest to you may or may not be what re-energizes and brings rest to your spouse. And most likely what energizes the two of you together is a hybrid of those two things. Like in our situation, I mean, Danny loves to be with people. He is such an extrovert. He just comes back charged up. I'm an introvert. I do love people, but God, I love to be alone, coffee and a book, and I am so charged up.
Well, what we do know about replenishing in general, that pertains to all of us, is that sleep brings rest to the body. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no substitute for it, friends. And I know as missionaries, sometimes we think that there is another café con leche or a steeped coca tea or whatever beverage of stimulant is in your community that supercharges the day. We think that'll work. It really doesn't. There's enough research that's been done to already know that without a decent amount of sleep, you're going to have a tougher time dealing with stress. You're going to be more susceptible to illness. And your body won't heal or reset the way God intended and designed it to. See, sleep brings rest to the body, but all the sleep in the world will not rest the soul. See, for any of you that have gone through one of those valleys of depression, you already know this. You know that you can sleep all day long and still wake up with a tired soul. See, just like sleep is basic for resting the body, stillness is basic for bringing rest to our souls. Yeah. Healthy, life-giving relationships, they're basic to bringing rest to our souls. And that's why it's so powerful of a combination of being still in the presence of God or being still in the presence of God with the people of God. That's why that's so healing too. Mm-hmm. See, it's a fact. Rested bodies and rested souls make room for marriage maintenance. It's where this marital energy is able to get charged back up. You know, there's a grid that's been very helpful for us to help us in these conversations. We found it in the book, 7 Habits of Successful People by Stephen Covey. And it's really helped us find that place where we can get charged back up. Mm-hmm. So I want you to picture a grid with 4 boxes. And let's start in grid 1, which would be the top left corner. And this box is called the important urgent box. This is high output. This is a box that's always full. There's always something going on in here. The only way to step out of this box is by stepping away or passing out from exhaustion. Friends, in ministry, this one is a constant. It's that war room feeling.
That ER vibe.
Absolutely. So now let's slide across to the top right corner, which we'll find grid 3. And this one is called the non-important, but urgent. This is high distraction, 0 traction. It's filler, where it's a bunch of busy work. If I had to give it a title, it would be notifications, right? This is where a lot of self-deception exists. I can be doing the right thing. I'm just doing it at the wrong moment, right? It's trying to figure out where all the Tupperware lids are disappearing to. We're trying to figure out a new organizational system for our sock drawer, right? It feels urgent, but it's not really that important. And if we slide down to grid 4, this would be the non-important, non-urgent. This is the high numbness. It's where we go zombie. It's where our medicators exist. It's where that dumb game on your cell phone keeps calling after you. It's where news binging happens. Or the Netflix death scroll happens. It's binging on whatever just because we feel like we deserve it. And it's not that any of those things are bad. It's just that this is a space that's promising us a counterfeit rest. But if we slide over to grid 2, we're going to find that this is important, but non-urgent. This is the high input. This is where intentionality exists. This is where we replenish. This is where our best work is done. This is where we connect with what's important in our life.
And this last grid is the family first space. It's the recognition that my spouse is also a valuable part of the mission and the team and the congregation. And a dynamic that's common for people who live in this high intensity, service oriented vocation, like being a nurse or a police officer or a missionary, is that the typical cycle for us is living in grid 1 till near burnout, then ejecting down to grid 4 for some me time in search of this counterfeit kind of refreshing. I mean, let's be real. Has anybody ever binge watched a Netflix series and said, "Oh my gosh, I feel so much better about life and my kids and God after doing that"? Okay, it's not to say that we can't go to grid 4 and veg out sometimes, but it is not the best source of refreshing. And sometimes it actually makes us feel worse. So our best route when we're seeking to refresh as a couple is to go to grid 2, personally and as a couple. What refreshes me? What refreshes us? It's the things that are important, but don't necessarily feel urgent. So if we use our word for this session, location here, then this is that exact location where we need to be intentional to get to individually. That way, we can be ready for the inevitable excursions to grid 1, that important urgent, where the terrain may need some off-roading and where our leadership, our strength, our energy, our care are required. Here's the thing though with grid 2, is it does often require a bit of energy because it's not the brain dead zone of grid 4. So for me, man, taking a walk refreshes me every time. But when I'm empty, I feel brain dead, I don't want to take a walk, even if I know it will help me, because the energy of just putting on my shoes sounds exhausting. And folks, that's where discipline comes in. For me, it's my mom. I hear my mom's perky voice in my head from when I was a kid going, "Just do it. You'll be glad you did." You're always right, Mom. So what does grid 2, that important, non-urgent, look like for you personally, spirit, soul, and body? Maybe it's reading a book. Maybe it's listening to music, doing something creative, moving your body, going on an adventure, doing something different.
Making love.
Hey, we're talking about individually, but now you're right. What does it look like for you as a couple? How you connect here is not necessarily how we arrive here personally. It's where it could be. Sexual touch, non-sexual touch, conversations like the ones you're doing here right now, or date night in whatever your context is. Again, there is an investment of some energy here. But you know, it reminds me of the story of the widow in 1 Kings 17, who shared the very last bits of her bread and water with Elijah when he asked for it. And we see there God multiplying what she gave. So for those of you who feel empty, come on, dig into those last drops. Share those last crumbs. Share what you have. Watch God do a miracle. And as my awesome mom would say, just do it. You'll be really glad you did. No, you really will. And so here now, we're going to leave you to continue with this discussion as a couple, and we will see you next time.